Hello, everybody, to another episode of Half a Clue Movie Review. And today, and by the way, thank you guys for subscribing and watching all our videos. I mean, we just recently talked about we passed 100 subscribers, and our growth has been growing a lot more. Okay, that sounds like your growth has been growing.
We've been growing at an exponential rate, and we are extremely excited about it.
And we're very grateful, and thank you guys so much. And, if you guys wanted more mainstream reviews, I'm sorry to disappoint you. We have another pretentious movie review coming in.
Hell yeah.
It's about Drive My Car.
Drive My Car.
If you think about the most mainstream Japanese film you could think about, it's a 3-hour Japanese film. By the way, spoiler alert.
Yeah, we're going to spoil the heck out of this, as we always do.
Yes. And it's about a man dealing with grief with another woman who's dealing with grief in a car, driving from, driving from one location to the other.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's about a play within a play while driving from one location to another.
Wow.
I know. My name is Philip, and I'm your today's host. I'm joined by
Ron. Hey, what's up? How you doing?
What's it called? It's honestly, this film just recently took the world by storm. Not the world. It's just like for people who care about films. The film world by storm, the industry, by being the first Japanese film to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture.
Wow.
What's it called? And it just knocked knocked like a couple of potential nominees that everyone expected, like Tick Tick Boom and Being the Ricardos. Thank God.
Yeah.
I wish it took out Don't Look Up, but whatever.
Yeah. Honestly, it was a real big shock. Like, I did not expect Drive My Car to be up there. Again, it's one of those movies where it's like, yeah, it probably deserves to be, but will it? Nah. But it did. It did.
Yeah, and not just that, it got nominated for It got nominated for Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Director and International Feature Film. 4 films. And it's like a 3-hour movie about Japanese people in cars. And the text of, there's a lot more to that, but if I were to be very diminutive. But yeah, it's cool. Drive My Car is directed by Ryusuke Hamaguchi, who's known for films like Happy Hour, Asako 1 and 2, and it just came out last year at the same time. This guy's beasting it up. Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, which is a lot different from this one. Like, this one is exploring long form storytelling, while Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy is dealing with anthology storytelling.
Yeah, it's like an adaptation of the TV show you used to watch while you're home alone. You're sick or whatever from school. It's basically them just spinning a wheel the entire time, but it's riveting.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So it's just, we've lost all our, all the subscribers we gained from Worst Person in the World. I just lost them in an instant.
You guys all just jump ship. Cowards.
What's it called? So for this film, it's like what's it called? His type of filmmaking. He's a new emerging talent. What's it called? And it's crazy we say emerging because I think he's like 40 something. It's a weird industry
in filmmaking terms. Yeah, that's like young. Wow, he's really breaking in, this kid. Look at him.
And let's not forget, I mentioned this in like every other podcast. Ridley Scott made Aliens when he was like 50 plus.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones was like, I don't know, I think he was 98 when he made The Fugitive.
Yeah,
and look at him, he's still going.
I say I don't care from The Fugitive to I don't care now, and just his acting sounds the same.
Yeah,
what's it called? Yeah, Hamaguchi is like his filmmaking is very exciting because it's very reminiscent of Ozu's filmmaking. Usually about like a slice of life or about Japanese daily public life, and also very reminiscent of Hirozuki Koreeda. And if you guys don't know who he is, he's also kind of like a modern day Ozu. I recommend Still Walking, and also Shoplifters, who just came out. This film is based on a short story, Drive My Car by Haruki Murakami. Very different. It's very short. It's a lot more short. It's a lot shorter than this. It's a short story, but
Yeah. This is his short story adaptation. Yeah. Could you imagine if he did Dune?
Oh, dude, I would love, I would love a Japanese version of Dune by Ryusuke.
Yeah, why not? Fuck it. He said he wanted to do sci-fi at some point.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. He did like a Solaris thing. That'd be dope.
Dude, that'd be, oh my God. It's just about Paul like aimlessly. Like,
no, the first movie would just be about them traveling to Arrakis.
It's everything within there and talking about the relationship between Paul. It's like, he asked Jessica, it's like, how do you feel about me as your son? Yeah. And Jessica's like, that is an interesting question. Let's talk about that and the generation of the treaties. Wow, Grandpa used to do this,
but only through analogy though. We're not gonna.
What's it called? Yeah, and then it's also written by Ryusuke Hamaguchi along with Takamasa Oe. And the film is about, like I said, spoiler alert. And honestly, I really do hate spoiling this film. Please watch this film before coming in.
No, really, yeah.
Because it's one of my favorite surprises. But it's like this. It's basically like this. This film starts off with a 40-minute prologue. And Rosie's in the room, so I actually hate saying this because I actually wanted her to watch this before coming in.
She's watched like bits and pieces as I've been watching, to be fair.
Yeah, but I think the biggest deterrent to getting her to watch the film was like, it's a 3-hour film about Japanese people driving a car. She's like, I'm good. What's it called?
So anyway, there's
it's a 40-minute prologue, which is just about our main character, Yusuke Kafuku, and his wife, Odo Kafuku, who Yusuke is a prolific theater actor, while Odo is a prolific screenwriter for television and films. And, it's just exploring their relationship, and a very unique relationship, and also them dealing with the trauma of the death of their daughter, and how they go and, pay their respects. But at the same time, one of the weird parts of their relationship is that, they like to have sex, and from their sex...
That is weird. They like to have sex?
That's
so weird.
And from their sex, it births, like, that's her creative process. Like, in order for her to write a story, she needs to have sex with,
her husband.
Yeah, her husband.
Or not.
Yeah, which we'll get to in a bit.
Dude.
Yeah. What's it called?
What a twist.
It's it's either that or it's having sex, and also what's it called? Yusuke needs to hear it and recite it back to him. Or her.
He will recite it back to her because she has a terrible memory.
Yes,
apparently.
she does. Yeah.
She's like, oh, hold on. She's got struck by inspiration through orgasm, and she just immediately begins to recite her story, and then he's like, all right, mental note. and then she jots it down later. A very interesting creative process.
Yeah, and it's just, and we'll talk about intimacy and narrative and interlocking in a bit in the prologue. And then it explores that. And then we find out later that Odo's actually having an affair, like, consistently with younger versions of her husband, or like younger men with black hair. But to be fair, a lot of Japanese men have black hair. So it's just weird. But they all look like younger versions of her husband. And then she dies of a brain hemorrhage, and then the credits, and not the credits, the opening title emerges, and that's just the first 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the film actually starts with him getting an offer to run the production of Uncle Vanya and being the director, and they want to be him being the lead, but he says no. And that's the actual film, and him and his relationship with Misaki Watari, and she has her own traumatic past to deal with regarding what's it called? Ironically, driving a car, and it's pretty much his directorial effort of running the production of Uncle Vanya, and how that parallels his own grief of dealing with the indiscretions, the extramarital affairs, and the death of Odo, while also just driving in a car, like, with Misaki.
Yeah. Hey, it turns out that Chekov's play is actually extremely reminiscent about his own life.
Yeah.
It's like, oh shit, this is relevant.
So it's an insane film. It's a lot. It's really dense. It grows over time. Honestly, even for the first time watching it, though I know for the first time watching it, a lot of people I know, they're either hot or cold. Like I've been like seeing some people on Instagram, or just regular critics love this film. It's like it's one of the most critically acclaimed films in 2021. It's like has 98% Rotten Tomatoes score with average rating 8.7, 91 Metacritic score, appeared on 89 Film Critics top 10, first or second for 23 of those. Is the first foreign film to win all three major U.S. critics group: the L.A. Film Critic Association, the New York Film Critics, and then the NSFC. The only other 6 films to do that. There's only 6 films to do that, including Goodfellas, Schindler's List, L.A. Confidential, The Social Network, and The Hurt Locker.
So there's a lot of hype around this film.
Yeah, so it's just like, there's I think that might have also attributed to the mixed response from the general public.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're just like, it must be amazing. This is like on the same level as Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm expecting Goodfellas in Japan, but with cars. And
it's weird. I think that like Parasite kind of opened up a lot of maybe like newer audiences to like foreign films and like, oh, foreign Asian films. Cool, I'll check this movie out.
Yeah,
And
they're
it's
like everything must be like Parasite, right?
yeah, it's not remotely similar in any way. So if you were expecting Parasite, I'd understand why you're disappointed, or expecting anything even really like, honestly, like your standard kind of film, or even like you're saying Goodfellas, Schindler's List, all those classic films. Like, no, it's not really like, it's pretty unconventional narrative.
Yeah, it's a contemplative film. It breaks the rules, and we'll talk about in the prologue of this inciting incident. Yeah, and then so even for people, even if you don't like it the first time, you don't connect with it. One, also that might be a cultural thing, because at least somebody from what's it called, who I've been to Japan, and also Korea is like right next to Japan, and there's a lot of intermingling between our two cultures through history and stuff like that. Even my own culture in Korea, we're like, for the most part, we're very subdued, socially, and I can understand when people watch this, right, and they're just like, I don't connect with them. They're all boring and stuff like that. It's just within the culture. It honestly is.
I wouldn't call you subdued, but I think that's the American influence on you.
yeah, that's the American. I'm Korean American. It's just like, what's it called? But yeah, it's the general, for hasty generalization. So
yeah, I'm Latino American, so we are not subdued. Latinos are not known for being very.
But the American has subdued you.
yeah. I got.
Mine's at the opposite effect.
Yeah, I have the opposite.
So it's I recommend people, for you guys to definitely check it out again. Okay, so to the prologue real quick. What's it called? And okay, so the prologue real quick. It's crazy. It's a 40-minute inciting incident. That's what it is. That's never inciting incidents are like a page.
Yeah, usually they're like, it has to happen within like the first like 10 pages.
Yeah,
usually
this is the first like 40 to 50 pages,
40 plus pages
of just like constant inciting. It's like all one inciting incident, right? The death of Odo is what propels the plot, which is crazy. And the title credits come forwarding in. It's just rule breaking as fuck, and I admire it so much. I mean, what did the effect did this have, this 40-minute inciting incident what's it called, have on your, whether your enjoyment of the film or your understanding of the film? Like when you watched it and you were like, oh, okay, the credits are going 40 minutes in, where you're like, this is a new type of film. You're like, okay, I know what I'm going in for. Or you're like, oh wow, fuck, I know what I'm going in for.
The thing is, well, you had mentioned to me before I started watching the movie that like, oh yeah, like it doesn't really start to like 40 minutes in. But as I was actually watching it and experiencing it, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I was pretty much just kind of engrossed in the story as I was moving along. And then by the time it did happen, I was like, oh shit, yeah, I forget. This movie keeps going. It is long, because it is a long movie. It's like it's like a like 40 seconds, under 3 hours. So it is pretty long. Honestly, I think it does a great job of, again, setting up the main character. You see a lot of what's kind of stewing and like marinating in his mind throughout the film, because for the most part he does obviously speak a lot, but he doesn't exactly like, he's not the most how do you say, like, talkative main character. Right.
Yeah, he's not the most sociable or gregarious person, right?
Exactly.
He's very contemplative within his mind. And the score, which we'll talk about, is very reflective of that.
Yeah. So I think this kind of like prologue really sets up everything you need to know about this guy going into it. So once the film, the real plot kind of kicks on, you already basically have an understanding of who he is, what he's thinking, or really what's kind of like in the back of his mind. And yeah, it's a really interesting approach. I dug it. I was for it. It was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I was just like, oh wow, this is like cool as fuck. I was already like, okay, I'm expecting more, what's it called, rule breaking shit. I mean, it's not necessarily rule breaking long takes and stuff like that, but just how consistently he does that.
Yeah, I've seen other films that have done similar ideas, where it's like the opening credits are like I don't know, maybe a scene or two scenes into the film.
Yeah, but
or
this was like,
yeah, this is so late that again that I was like, oh, is essentially its own short film leading into this one. So
yeah, it's cool. Like if you actually think like the actual Drive My Car film is like only about like 2 hours 20 minutes, but with a 40-minute prologue attached to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which is cool. What's it called? And and with the whole thing with Odo, what do you think of Odo was as a character, the performance before the affairs? I was kind of like, it's an interesting take on a character. I liked her, not gonna lie, and also mini crush. But I was like, this is it's an interesting relationship, and then we're going in, and the weird thing is, even after the affairs, I didn't hate her. I was a little bit like, I was like, oh wow, this really sucks. I feel bad for the main character, Ryusuke, Yusuke, but it's like just her whole thing with tying sex and narrative together, and the intimacy of like how it's kind of like with sex and stuff, like, when they lost their kid, right? That's a big thing,
Yeah.
the trauma.
I honestly, it felt a lot like how Kofuku's like he doesn't like understand exactly how to feel about her, and I feel like that happens to a lot of the audience where
Yeah.
it's like
She's very
you
likable, but she's also does something kind of despicable towards, Yusuke Kafuku.
exactly. So it's like you carry over this like this goodwill for her because she is charming, she's very likable, she's kind of presented to be like very much. I don't want to just say like an object of desire 'cause she's not. She's more than that. She's she's a complicated character pretty much, and so his mixed feelings towards her and our mixed feelings towards her just really linger throughout this film, and her voice being like ever present throughout because he's listening to the tapes of her of her reading the Uncle Vanya screenplay throughout. Just again keeps that presence with us throughout the whole narrative. So yeah, again, it's like that same thing where you're just wrestling it within your mind. You're like, gosh, she's kind of a dick. It's like, oh, but at the same time, like, she's like, she's complicated, man. It's like she's quirky, but like at the same time, it's like I don't know. So I don't know. It's complicated.
Yeah. It's with her, it's just like the most interesting thing is like how it's in a weird way, because as we talk about themes of grief and trauma and overcoming them, right, and in their own different ways. It's I think one thing is with her, it's almost as if her way of, because she does ask the question of like, do you want to have kids again
Yeah.
or something like that, and he says, and you can tell clearly he might have had that, but he rather have her than the kids.
Yeah.
Kind of like worst person in the world with, with those two main characters. But I think with her, like in her own way of having kids, like, and she's birthing children, but instead of children, it's her stories, and through the act of sex and just kind of interlocking story creating and stuff like that. And I think that's interesting. That's an
That
interesting
is very
thing.
interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, it's this Odo's a person, but she died of brain hemorrhage, so now we can move on.
Yeah. No, honestly, yeah, because her death comes so suddenly, and it's
that was crazy.
it's at the point right before she seems like she wanted to talk to him about possibly the affairs, or we don't really know what, because he catches her, he doesn't say anything, and then later she like almost immediately afterwards she tells him a story, her story that she's explaining to him about her, the character she's been talking about, almost being caught masturbating. So it's like, okay, there's that sexual character. She's very much obviously sees herself as this main character, or at least is putting a lot of her self into her. And then so it's like, does she know? Did she know that he caught her or saw her or something? And
or
then
maybe the guilt is like catching up to her and stuff.
Yeah.
And then because
and
also
then,
like he has glaucoma. He's like losing his eyesight and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's the reason why he can't drive his own car. But yeah, then right before she dies, she's like, I need to talk to you about something, and then boom, she dies. So it's like it leaves you in that same state of like, oh wait, like that dissatisfaction again, where he's like, he wants to confront her but he can't, and then but he loves her but he doesn't forgive her, but he does. It's like and obviously that's like his main
with Uncle Vanya
issue.
Yeah. Let's go. All right, let's go. Let's get into the main relationship. Actually, not even Odo.
To the meaty greedy.
It's Yusuke Kafuku and Misaki Watari. Misaki Watari being the driver, because when he runs the production of Uncle Vanya, they were like, yeah, we had an incident in the past, buddy, and because of that, you're not gonna be able to drive, you son of a bitch. And he's like,
he said it just like that too.
Exactly. Imagine all Japanese people sounded like this. You son of a bitch. Can you imagine playing Street Fighter and Ryu's like, Hadouken. I'm so sorry for our Japanese.
I don't even know who to apologize for there.
I'm so sorry. I'll make
to the listeners.
I'll make a Korean joke too. Okay. But what's it called? But one thing that's really cool is by the way, the red Saab. I don't know why I thought it was like a Toyota car. Thank you for fixing me while watching. That was a red Saab 900. And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty cool vintage car.
Yeah, it's a very particular kind of car. It's
a
like,
character itself.
Yeah, really. It stands out on its own, which of course was the intention of the filmmaker. He wanted it to be able to really contrast against the background, the water, because they are driving around water a lot. Yeah. So that bright red car just really stands out against the.
And nighttime too, even you could just like see it.
Yeah, it just pops visually.
Because I know it was like yellow in what's it called in the original Murakami short story, which is I'm glad it wasn't. It would have just blended with the background and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
exactly.
there's a reasoning for that. Like yellow signifies a certain literary meaning to it, but it's
Yeah.
fine. This is where
This is a
adaptation.
visual medium. Okay.
Yeah. I know. What's it called? But yeah, also with Misaki Watari, with she has a pretty interesting backstory where it's the reason why she's one of the best best drivers in Japan because
She's a transporter.
yeah.
Oh wait, no, never mind. Different.
But she because it's like in a weird way, like 'cause especially our two main characters, everything's tied to like their previous trauma with their loved ones, right? And that's like what defines their relationship between the two, that they're both trapped by things that don't exist anymore. Particularly in Misaki's case is her mother, her dead mother, and Yusuke is like his dead wife.
Yeah, and even the actual setting, it being in like Hiroshima when they go
Yes.
there, of course, a place that is pretty much defined in modern times by its past.
Yeah.
You know.
So it's
Yeah.
perfect to have it there.
Yeah.
So, and the reason why she's so good at driving is that we find out that it's through childhood abuse, where her mom was hitting her or beating her until every time there's a bump or where she woke up from a drive. And as a result, with her trauma, she became a very smooth and savvy driver.
Yeah, honestly, it sounds a bit like either a superhero or supervillain origin
Yeah,
story, where it's like,
Powers
why
is
are they
driving
so
well.
good at this? It's because abuse. It's terrible. But honestly, it is kind of like in that moment in the scene in the film when she's like actually explaining it.
Yeah,
It's
and
it's very
and
opening to, especially, sorry to cut you off, but like she's a character that like again is very silent. She doesn't really speak much throughout the film. So when she does finally open up, it's like, oh, you really get that window into her mind.
and it's good. It's good, and you see. And it makes sense why she's so quiet too, right? Because like that trauma that happened,
Yeah.
And then
She's literally beat into silence.
yeah, she's like, you shut the fuck up. Right? It's the mom is like pretty intense. Oh wait, let's talk about let's talk about that scene. And by the way, you guys, if you what's it called? I might force the crew where we get the entire crew to drive my car, because I just realized it's a lot and there's a lot to talk about. But for now, we'll just kind of give our opinions, right, for the HBO Max launch.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna have to touch back on it, like when we talk
And the
Oscars
best pictures
and
and
stuff.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. It'll be a 40-minute of the thing dedicated to drive my car. I'm just kidding. You could tell I might be biased towards this film. But yeah, that one of my favorite scenes from the film is like their trip to Hokkaido, right, from Hiroshima to Hokkaido, where they go to her hometown.
Yeah.
And then like they're both characters that are defined by the guilt when it comes to their past loved ones. And we talked about it earlier with Oda and her mom. But we find out for her that we found two revelations. Yusuke knew the entire time that Oda was cheating on him.
Yeah.
And also that he purposely delayed the confrontation because he just didn't want to. So he came extra late. That's why it was like nighttime when he came back.
Yeah.
So like he has a guilt of like, if I came earlier, maybe I would have been able to call and then save her life.
Yeah. Because with brain hemorrhaging and anything, it's like every second counts.
Yeah.
And him being extra late very likely could have just cost her life, which is tragic. And again, that's like, talk about mixed emotions with, it's like this woman was cheating on you and you knew about it, and it's like
but also you might be one of the not the leading causes. That's so unexpected.
You could be very largely responsible for her death.
Yeah.
And that's
a very conflicting emotion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then with Watari, her thing was that she saw her mother in the house as there was a mudslide going on, but she chooses not to save her. Yeah. Because of the abuse and trauma. She doesn't want that to continue. And she sees it as like a gateway to like freedom. And I'm like, wow, that's like both. Like but at the same time, it's not commendable actions.
No.
But at the same time, it's hard to condemn them for that.
It's understandable.
Because they're both things. Like for him, he didn't know she was gonna have brain hemorrhage.
No.
Yeah. And then for her, that's like her source of her trauma right there. And there's like in a way to escape.
Yeah. As someone who's just been watching The Sopranos lately, it's okay to like hate your parents.
Oh, by the way,
sometimes
Sopranos. I'm just kidding. Enough teasers for future things.
Yeah, yeah. If you want us to talk about Sopranos someday, maybe we will.
Yeah. Ron has an interesting title for Sopranos podcast. Okay, but yeah, I think that was really interesting. And when they embrace and they're talking about how they need to live on and move on from the trauma, kind of mirroring what we'll talk about being Uncle Vanya. I think that was very moving for me. That's like probably my favorite scene in the entire thing. Very beautifully shot too, against like the background of snow with the wide shot. Very long take, by the way, when we get to cinematography. And I love that. I love that they stay on the emotions. And what about you? What about that scene spoke to you?
Again, it kind of sums up a lot of this film, where it's a very quiet film. It's a very quiet scene. Like, I don't think there's any kind of score throughout it. It is just like them silently kind of contemplating what was happening here, and her kind of just coming to terms with it. And yeah, so it was like very impactful. But yeah, I don't know if it's my favorite scene, to be honest.
Oh, I think I know what your favorite scene is.
You think? Yeah.
Yeah, I think. I think.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay. Is it fine if I guess it?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Let's transition to our other character. That I think, what's it called? It's Koji Takasuki. I'm guessing the scene in the. By the way, so Koji Takasuki, he's what's called young, very talented, hot-headed actor that used to work with Odo on a television project. But due recent constant his sexual proclivities and anger, and he's like a Japanese Marlon Brando. As he's been labeled difficult to work with and has a bit of a media sting. So he seeks out Yusuke for either mentorship, or was it with guilt? Because he might have had an affair with Odo.
We don't know.
He denies it, but there's very strong inclinations that he probably did, at least based on like how else would he have got this information, right?
Yeah. And then from this scene in particular, which is
this your favorite scene?
Yes, it is my favorite scene.
You talk about it.
Yeah. So they finally, they're riding in the car together, and then he starts talking to him about the story that Odo used to tell him as they were having sex. Sorry, Odo and Yusuke. Yeah. He starts telling him the story. This is the one that she would tell me. She would tell me while we were, doing it, and then I would recite it back to her and whatever. And he's like, how does it end? And he's like, I don't know how it ended. And he's like, well, no. He says, and that's where it ended. And then he's like, no, it's not. Like, I know what happens after that. And he's like, oh, you do? He's like, yeah. And then he starts explaining it to him, and it's like, again, the story is very fascinating on itself. Like, that whole short story is like very interesting.
They make a spin-off, and that's they create the Drive My Car cinematic universe.
It's called The Lamprey. And then, but and then he starts telling him basically the continuation of the story, and then where it actually ends from there. And it's just a very fascinating and just interesting scene. It just draws you in with this the actor's performance. If I can get it right, Misaki Okada.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okada.
He does such a great job of like just like them playing off each other, and he really kind of carries that scene, I think, as he's explained to him. And you can't ever really understand where this character is coming from.
Right. You don't understand, like, because like spoiler, he kills somebody, but at the same time, he's also very charming and sympathetic and empathetic. So you never know, and also you never know if he's like, because with the question about whether he had the affair or not, you never know where he's coming from, where it's like it's from guilt or if it's actually genuine affectation towards Yusuke. So that scene, I was guessing the entire time too. It was oddly creepy, like it was Patrick Bateman but charismatic.
It's like a creepy, comforting scene where he's like, it's like he's pretty much insinuating that, pretty much I fucked your wife and she told me this story after we did it, but at the same time he's kind of like
he's denying,
consoling him, and also denying the fact that it happened. He's kind of consoling him and be like, hey, well, here's the continuation of what happened. I know you wanted to know what's going to happen. I still want to know what would have happened. And it's a lot like this than most of this film, where it's just like conflicting emotions.
There's a lot of subtext going on. I did like that.
Of course.
And that is my second favorite scene, I gotta admit. It's anything that guy's just so mesmerizing whenever he comes on scene. And it's like, and also he's the most emotive guy of the film, so it actually helps quite a bit.
Yeah. And it's interesting when they're like rehearsing, and he specifically tells him like, no. Basically say these lines with zero emotion. And then he's just like, oh. It's so stifling for him. He's like, I can't do that. But yeah, it's very interesting.
And their relationship too is like my second favorite relationship in the film.
Yeah,
where they're going back and forth. Where like in a weird way, he also does have a affectation towards him. Is like almost like a fatherly or older brother.
He definitely admires him. You can tell, but it's hard to tell what he's actually looking for, in this relationship. I don't know.
And by the way, I guess like, I shall save it for the cinematography, but the murder stuff, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Yeah. All right. So let's get into the big thing. the intertextual commentary that this film is like a text within a text. The first like because it starts off with and these texts like inform what we understand or foreshadow what's to come in the film or parallels our main character's journey. The first play is Waiting for Godot, which is French play translated into like an English language play by an Irish playwright, Samuel Beckett, and it covers two people who are waiting for a guy named Godot that never comes, and they're people stuck in this state of stasis, and they're affected by a presence that's never physically there. And guess who that's like? It's like Misaki and Yusuke. Yeah. So it's just like stuff like that, and I think that was really cool. But it's and then I mean and then we previously touched on how it parallels and stuff like that, but it then goes into the meat, the actual play that's paralleling everything. Uncle Vanya. Do you want to get into real quick? What's it called? Actually, have you ever before this heard of Uncle Vanya or stuff like that?
I heard of Chekov before. He's just one of those literary like titans. So he comes up a lot, but I'd not heard. I think I may have heard of Uncle Vanya before, just like in passing, because the name sounded familiar. I was like, Uncle Vanya. I'm like, yeah, that sounds familiar, but I don't know.
I think they made
anything about it, honestly.
I think they might have made a film with, or some type of visual performance. You know oh god, what's his name? He plays the computer guy in Captain America.
Stanley Tucci?
No.
Oh, the Swedish guy. Oh,
yeah, I forgot his name, but
yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, that guy. He's like in Uncle Vanya, like some type of Uncle Vanya related material. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
What's it called? Who knows? If you guys want to compare Uncle Vanya
to Captain America,
what's it called? We won't do it. What's it called? We have a lot on our plate. Yeah, it's such an interesting play. Like, it's a brief context for Uncle Vanya. Like, I had to. Gosh, for you guys, we did a lot of Uncle Vanya-ness for this thing, but it's a reworking. It's a reworking of Anton Chekov's previous play, The Wood Demon. Which is a comedic play, but it would change a couple things, particularly change the climactic suicide to an anticlimax of a failed homicide, which is funny because in the film there's an actual homicide.
That is hilarious.
I know. I mean, because it's like in terms of parallels. I mean, not like that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But Uncle Vanya is pretty much like it's pretty much it follows a middle-aged man, Vanya, who's like kind of like Marlon Brando from The Underwater, for not like in terms of physically or anything, but like I could have been a contender type of like guy, like has regrets about his life and how it turned out.
Pretty much all the characters are stuck in their past or like things that could have been or should have been. And a sense of regret and ennui,
and they're being chained by their regrets of their past. Yeah. And the only people that aren't are kind of or I mean to a lesser extent, but like the professor, Serebryakov, and also Vanya has a deep affectation towards Yelena, who's the very attractive a second wife of the professor. But yeah, it's that and what's it called? And Vanya's regret towards a thing and his arguments towards the different members of the family. The whole plot parallels Yusuke's own life. And it's funny that it parallels it, and probably parallels it too much, that Yusuke refuses to play Uncle Vanya, which, is kind of like his true self.
Yeah, at one point he literally says that Chekov's words have a way of like basically just cutting too deep. Like they're too real.
Yeah.
They're too real. He's like, I can't go there, man. Like I can't go there mentally, which is understandable. He lost his kid and his wife. It's been rough.
Yeah. And I'm like, there's different ways to, like, he's using this play as like a form of therapy, right?
Yeah.
And also maybe form of punishment.
Possibly.
Yeah. Because like he gets Takasuki to play Uncle Vanya, even though Takasuki's a very young actor. But like denying him of the handsome professor or Astrov on purpose.
He's like, I want to be the smooth dude. And then he's like, no, you're going to be the self-loathing loser.
Yeah. And I love people congratulating him. It was like, oh, you did it. You got the main role. And he looks so defeated. He's like, doesn't make sense. But yeah, I mean, like it's weird too. Like even like some of the things like he internalizes most of his emotions, right? Unlike Vanya, who's very expressive towards his emotions throughout the play.
Yeah,
and which and that's his character arc. By him taking on the role of Vanya is him externalizing emotions for the first time. Like right after the scene with Misaki at her hometown, Because like there's things where it's saying like my existence is devoid of happiness, which is basically how his life is.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like there's an argument between the lovers, like whether it's Vanya and Yelena, or whether it's like Yelena and Astrov, and that's something like he wished he did with with fucking Odo.
Absolutely.
And it's and it is nice and to see him finally take in and choosing to do to choose to actually take on the role of Uncle Vanya and at least that storyline with by the way we'll get into the communication aspect, but Sonia played by a deaf Korean actress.
Sorry, continue.
But and them doing the whole thing of like and I think that like tweaking the lines a little bit of like let's move on, right?
Yeah.
With this, let's move on from regret. Let's no longer be chained from the guilt of our past or what could have been.
Which is great because like the end of the play, well, I mean, it's an interesting choice because the end of the actual play, it seems to kind of just linger on those ideas of like, incoming death. There's a lot of existentialism basically where it's like, hey, it's just we're all going to die eventually, like no one's going to remember us once we're gone. No one cares. No one in the future is going to care about what's happening in the present, etc. So it's kind of refreshing again with the pace of the story in the film that he's kind of like, no, let's just move past that. Let's just kind of finally just move on with our lives and just enjoy what we've got now in a way.
Yeah.
And that's at least my interpretation. I don't know if anyone
No, I think it's a really good interpretation. I kind of believe the same way. It's like it's therapeutic. It's like one of the final times where he's able to move on from his wife Odo. And that was the final thing his character needed to do, right? To complete his arc. And that's great. And then, what's it called? And we don't have much time to get into this, but I thought it was also very interesting that it was a global adaptation of Anton Chekov or Chekhov's Uncle Vanya, where every character is played by a different ethnic or cultural background. They're all speaking different languages.
Exactly. And it kind of like, to the director's own words, it kind of focuses in on the characters having to react specifically to the actors' body language and like, expressions and everything. Kind of zeroes in and focuses that, which is like such a fascinating idea. Like, I don't know, I never even like thought about something like that before.
It's so interesting because it's an emotional reaction to each other and less so a verbal
exactly because that's one of the big issues that a lot of actors have. Early actors is they tell them like you need to stop reacting to the lines or not reacting to what they're going to say or anticipating what you're going to say.
You react to their actions or how that affects you emotionally.
Acting is reacting, etc.
Yeah. What's it called? Oh my gosh! Oh, young actors. Oh my god! I could go on a rant. Yeah. Everyone's like, it's all about the lines. No, it isn't. Shut the fuck up. And it's in a weird way too. It's just like it's like I'm trying to think of like what is Ryusuke trying to do by making a global adaptation of Chekhov's play within his own film adaptation of Murakami's short story. And I wonder if there's like a commentary on a communication between the artist and text. And I think that's constantly brought up with Yusuke himself. He's like, as you talked about earlier, Chekhov has a way of cutting deep into the actors or the artists. But it's cool. I liked it a lot. I love this film. I feel like I'm jerking this film off too much. Let's get into negatives. There's none.
Too long? Maybe.
No.
Maybe. No.
No. What's because okay. No. When we
cut out all the driving scenes, cut them all.
You know what? When we get into, I have a specific line in question. We'll talk about the length. So I'll talk about that in a bit. I have a mini rant. Let's go. Okay. By the way, Hidetoshi Shinomiya, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. You are a beast, my friend. You have made the best understated cinematography. It's the best understated cinematography of 2021. I think, in my opinion, where it's just fair. I mean, as much as I don't think it's the best best shot film.
Yeah.
But because like there's films like The Green Knight and stuff like that. But they're very loud in terms, not loud.
Yeah.
They're very expressive in like how they're shots, and it's very obvious the artifice of it. But this one
it's perfectly serviceable to the story and the tone that this film is trying to set.
Yeah. It's like it's clean, but it's not like overlit like a Disney family film or something like that. Or it's and they're soft, but there's enough like, shadows to show contrast. And a lot of long takes.
Yeah.
A lot of two shots, a lot of wide shots, not that much close-ups.
I think you mentioned while we're watching it where it's like it's subtly stylish at times where it's just like you're kind of like it does a good job of like contrasting different scenes where it's like this is a good looking shot. Like this is like just a sweet looking frame that I don't mind, that I like them lingering on, because there is a lot of lingering, especially in the actual car scenes, of course, where they're driving for a long time. just talking. And to make those kind of car scenes, the dialogue compelling and, visually interesting is much harder than than it's easier said than done. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And also the driving, the choice to not shoot it on green screen for most of the time. It's just actual driving, like for the most part. That's impressive and that's ballsy because it's kind of like maybe they don't have a big post production budget. And that was one of the reasons why they forced them. But it's kind of like, okay, yeah, but it's kind of just like, yeah, I give them props for that. But okay, let's talk about first, like, couple to wrap this up. One, badass score. I love the score. I've been listening. It's been a vibe, as our friend Jeremy always says.
It's a vibe.
Yeah, it's I've been listening. I every time I've been driving for this past week, I've been listening to the first track, "Drive My Car," or even like "You Must Work" or whatever.
I mean, I don't think it's obviously not just a coincidence because they both have the word drive in it, but since Drive, I haven't had like a soundtrack that I've wanted to just listen to while just cruising, you know?
Especially for long drives. I'm like,
yeah,
should I go to Seattle just listen to this? Maybe not.
It feels like Drive My Car soundtrack. You listen to that during the day when you're driving around, and then Drive, you switch that up at night.
Yeah.
It's like, let's get some synth in here.
And I know you mentioned the length. Okay, I disagree saying that people saying too long.
I was kidding. Yeah, I think it's fine.
But then like, no, I mean like not with you, but like with people who say that.
Yeah, there are people, yes.
But people say it's too long, but then like, but they never talk about what they could cut. It always irritates me because I'm like, okay, I only can say a film is too long if there's a scene that doesn't benefit like the mood, the atmosphere, or propelling the narrative. So if you can't think of that, you guys need to shut the fuck up. You know what I mean?
It's
watch this fucking film.
Pretty much the entire film. Every time they're in, again, because you could be like, well, maybe they trim down some of the dialogue in the cars, but like every piece of dialogue in the car feels like it's
the character, the mood, the
exactly.
themes. Exactly. It's not a wasted thing. Okay, final ratings. Okay, you know what? It's obvious. I've been jerking this film off. It's a 3-hour plus jerk off into the museum. What about you?
For me, I'm putting it on the shelf, but
damn.
I know
it's fine.
But the thing is, this film, I really do see myself revisiting this film in the future. So I really do want it on the shelf so I can revisit it because it's something that I think I'm just gonna reflect on through the years. And I think as you just age, it will basically change in how you view it and how you interpret certain things. So that means a lot to me, and I feel like in the future I might put it in the museum. But for right now, I'm putting it, on the shelf.
Okay, that's a shame. I'm having foresight. I'm just kidding. All right, thank you guys for another episode.
Thank you
guys. Stay tuned for another episode. As always, if you like our content, follow us on Instagram, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye. Bana, drive my car.